Hello, all. Happy Monday. Good morning, good afternoon. How is everyone? My voice is scratchy this morning, so if I start coughing, excuse me. How is everyone today? Hope you're having a really good Monday. Let's see who's with us today. We have got Chris Persia. Good morning. Mark Infinitely Tired. Good morning to you. Darth Haster. Good morning, love. Colin P. Smith. Good afternoon. Good to see you. Oh, and there it goes, jumping on me. We have got the geek inside. And no, not those kind of fantasies in genre. Good morning to Mary's Game Room. Hello, sweetheart. Oh, and right off the bat, we have got a super chat from Jester of Sin. Good morning. Thank you, honey. Or good afternoon, rather. He says, just wanted to let you know I was unsubscribed today. Damn YouTube, I'm no bot. So I'm back and staying put. Keep those fires burning. Hell yes. Thank you, honey. Yeah, YouTube, I think, is up to shenanigans again. So keep an eye on that, guys. But thank you. And thank you for your super chat. Thank you. Oh, who else have I got? We've got Pod Racing Palpatine. Good morning. Jim the Viking. Good afternoon. And Pat S. Let's do this. Absolutely. Ricky B. Good to see you. Welcome. Official Polyworld Trainer. Good morning. Good afternoon to Robert Pearson. Barahin 63. He says, OMG, every time I hear this intro, all I can think of is a collision alarm on a ship. It gets you woken up, doesn't it, in the morning? Good morning to Aki Capella. Welcome, good to see you. And good morning to Loki. That was a great show this morning, boss. And he says, no notification. That sounds about right. Yeah, and notifications have been a bit hit and miss recently. So, but fingers crossed it gets back to normal. Good morning to William Jackson. Good to see you. And I think we've got everybody. No, we didn't. Psychodwarf. Hey, good to see you, honey. Good morning. Hope everyone's doing okay today. Yeah, so I was casting about looking for something to cover this morning, and usually Mondays is news, but I thought I'd do something a little bit different today. I came across a article on Bounding into Comics that really struck a chord with me. I've been a huge fantasy fan for probably as long as I can remember. And I started off with the Chronicles of Narnia, and then obviously moved on to Discworld, and that's my kind of big thing. But I've always gravitated towards fantasy, whether it be films, books, games. It's always been a big part of my life, more so even than, say, sci-fi or horror, which I'm also big fans of. So this one really struck a chord with me. So what I thought I'd do is I'll read through it with you guys and kind of get your take on it, and then see where we go from there, see what you guys think about fantasy. So let me share this and we'll read through it, guys. Oh, before I do, Psychodwarf, thank you, honey. That's a $2 super chat from Psychodwarf. He says, up to my elbows in DIY. Have a good day. Well, you have a good day too, sweetheart. And try not to work too hard, because I know you do all the time. Let me grab this article. Good morning to you, brightest day. Good to see you. How are you doing today? There we go. So, as I said, this was from Bounding into Comics. It came out on the 16th, and it's by AC Graves. So, if you guys want to check it out as well, I highly recommend it. It's a really well written article, but we're going to go through it now. So, let me line that up. Fantasy is escapist, and that is its glory. If a soldier is imprisoned by the enemy, don't we consider it his duty to escape? If we value freedom of mind and soul, if we partisans of liberty, then it's our plain duty to escape and to take as many people with us as we can. By J.R.R. Tolkien. Those words spoken by the father of modern fantasy are at the core of the genre. The only limit within fantasy is your imagination. or it used to be. Now a new plague has risen, and its infection has not only been spreading, but it has been festering. Activism. Don't we know it? Can I just say how much I love that picture of the hamster? Disguised as virtue, activism has seeped into the foundation of fandom, a collection of imaginative, fun, accepting people of all shapes, sizes, colours, and creeds brought together by their love of IPs, such as Lord of the Rings, Warhammer 40k, Doctor Who, Dungeons and Dragons, Discworld, and countless more are now at the mercy of disingenuous, disinterested attention seekers and shallow virtue signalers. SJWs. Simple questions would be asked to find common ground, learn about your fellow fan, and open up discussions that turn strangers into friends. Who is your favourite character? Why? Would you be a mage or a tank? I'd be a mage. After a time, people who were neither familiar with the roots of the IP or had any real passion for them began to take notice, and their calculating minds, driven by disease of activism, began to plot. This particular group are not the normies who are busy working and can't really devote time and energy to become oh my god, I can't speak, an intricate part of the fandom, enjoy the escapism of different universes when they can. So the casual fan. No, this group is much more sinister, the trendies. The simple questions referenced above that no true fan would find insulting or upsetting are now decried as gatekeeping, misogynistic, and toxic. Those sound very familiar, don't they, guys? Who hasn't been called that in the past few years? Whether you're a fan of Star Trek or Star Wars or Doctor Who. A culture built around understanding the human condition by building bridges that link souls directly through imagination is now being crushed by trendies and women who want to be worshipped as queen of the nerds without doing any research or even cracking open the source material. And then he's getting brackets here. See Harvey Weinstein's former personal assistant publicly begging for her own Star Wars series, or practically any current female author of young adult genres or in the comic book industry, and the current state of cosplay for reference. I always like cosplay, I've got to admit, but I do know exactly what they mean. Men who had delivered fantastic stories and surreal universes were now shamed and shunned. Now, instead of strong men with a vision of a better future at the helm, trendies have taken over the ship, blasted holes in the hull, and congratulate each other on destroying the evil men of the world that dare to tell the stories the trendies didn't like as the ship sinks with them on board. Trendies are in every facet of the culture, and they are attempting to force their will and their nihilistic dystopia on those seeking refuge from the mundane daily routines and lives. We'll leave that there for a minute and jump back to you guys to see what you're saying, because I can't have the chat up at the same time. But what do you think, guys? Do you think that that is the case? Are we under attack? Perez says, is cruel sci-fi or fantasy? I would say it's both. I'd say it's closer to fantasy for me, but I'd say it kind of straddles the line. And Colin, yeah, I will be getting to that in a little bit as well. Orcs are racist. No, they're not. Jim says, Kroll is fantasy-fi. That's a pretty good way of doing it. Good morning, Broken Entertainment. Good to see you. Jim the Viking says, the best thing about the woke crowd is that they're not real fans. So they only know the stuff that hits mainstream. They will never find the really cool fantasy stuff. I'd agree with that, and that's what I thought to begin with. But it seems to be seeping into even things that you would have thought would have been not on the radar. So things like board games, Discworld, I wouldn't have thought it would have been the case, and even Lord of the Rings. you know. I wish I could do this line justice. Bruce the Chopper is out of work because of them wokies. Good morning to you, naughty monkey, says, we've always been under attack. True, true. But it seems to be a lot more focused now. It's a lot more insidious. We've talked about it before. We've talked about it on the show, and I know Loki's talked about it as well in the past. It's not enough to be a fan of something now. They have to come in and take over and, you know, push out the existing fan base. It's that whole, this is ours now, this isn't yours. It has to change because we want it to change. Official Polyworld trainer says they will get to you for your now hidden franchise, give the woke weirdo some time. Yeah, that's pretty much the way I see it as well. I don't think anything is, you know, hidden anymore. Because, you know, being a geek is cool. It's always been cool, but now it's kind of mainstream cool. Whereas before, you know, people who were geeks, we knew we were cool. We just didn't need others to tell us that it was the case. And Broken Entertainment, what they're talking about is already in the publishing industry. Browse AuthorTube or YouTube or read what agents are saying. You have to check all the boxes or you're evil. Absolutely. Yeah, it's you know, you have to have, you know, a certain number of female characters of different ethnicities. It's not about telling the story anymore. It's about ticking boxes, as you say. And good morning, Pudgy. Good to see you. You're gonna get a little bit fired up this morning, but no swearing. I promise. Or at least I will try. And Barahim63 says, "Oh, the wokies are destroying pen and paper RPGs. Unless you want to want to play as a furry everything, vaguely human, anthropomorphic, grey blob, or it's offensive." Oops. Mark says, "I guess the woke bunch never really heard of GURPS, Genetic Universal Role Playing System. Steve Jackson created it back in the 80s. Great system to do whatever you want and be whatever you want." That I would absolutely agree with. And there's even a Discworld version that I have of. Never played it, but it's really cool to read through. And Para says, "Geeks, nerds, dorks, time to head back underground. They will go away sooner or later." And good morning to you, Cam Cam. Good to see you. Purple, this is a disease, a poison to good stories and creativity. Nails it, Cam Cam. Absolutely. You can't have good stories whilst you're looking over your shoulder all the time, you know, having to tick boxes, having to worry, are you going to get cancelled because this doesn't meet standards of this new trendy fan, as the article is saying. But let's carry on for a little bit more, shall we? Let me just get a drink before I continue. It goes on to say, trendies are in every facet of the culture, and they are attempting to force their will and I've read that. See what happens if you don't concentrate. There we go. Let's go back down. The site is striking out again, this time long-standing tabletop role-playing game Dungeons and Dragons, which has been hammered with woke mob threats and calls for cancellation recently. Their recent article, Improving Dungeons and Dragons, Racism and the Barbarian, written by Paul B. Stusavant, I think that is, attempts to present itself as scholarly research journal by offering outdated theories and quotes with no context or counter. Yeah, that sounds about right. Just pick random quotes and don't have anything to back up your argument. However, the article wastes no time in accusing the game of having racism built into its core aspects. Stuttervant also describes the fandom surrounding D&D as deeply hostile and that they reject criticism. He claims that the game is finally going through a long overdue reckoning. That's a sinister word, isn't it? A reckoning that should not be excluded to D&D, but all fantasy franchises should face it. It's not really a reckoning, rather Wizards of the Coast, the company behind D&D, bending the knee, hoping they would not be decapitated if they gave in. Never giving, never apologise, never surrender. However, they expose their neck and frothing at the mouth, trendies from the public medievalists are going for humiliation in the public square before dropping the axe. Yeah, it's not enough to cancel something. Whatever it is they're trying to cancel has to be dragged through the mud first and ripped apart. The public medievalist is an unthinkable fury of character descriptions, introductions, and class paths, specifically those of the barbarian. Referencing the player's handbook, Sturtevant takes issues with the barbarian as a whole, claiming they are governed by rage, the one emotion that is socially acceptable in the framework of toxic masculinity. Nothing wrong with toxic masculinity, just saying, guys. From there, he takes issue with the two paths the barbarian can choose from: the path of the berserker, which he ascribes to Vikings. I know which way I'd go, and the path of the totem warrior. He claims the path of the totem warrior culturally appropriates indigenous cultural and religious practices. Of course. You can see where this is going, can't you? He goes on to claim that the path of the berserker is the far less racist path. Okay, but he still doesn't like it. Nevertheless, he still claims it's racist, not just as racist as the other path. And his main reason for doing so is the use of the term savage. Wow. Okay, I think this guy's got issues. Whilst decrying the bigotry of the noble savage, the public medievalists are guilty of the bigotry of low expectations. And that's, I would absolutely agree with, and that's something that keeps popping up time and time again. Sturtevant cites the long discredited and extremely racist notion that the orcs somehow represent black people. I've never seen it. I don't know where this idea came from. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. He goes on to accuse Tolkien of planting the seeds of their own racism while sardonically calling him the father of the genre. Ooh, shots fired if you're going to go after Tolkien. Whilst taking issue with the word savage, he writes, the word is most often applied to orcs and half-orcs. Several essays have laid out plainly how orcs have long been coded as people of colour. Not true. This is true in D&D and has deep roots that go back to the father of the genre, J.R.R. Tolkien. Wow. That's some bold claims he's coming out with. Deeper into IDDRB, Sturtevant briefly and incorrectly pulls out the theory of degeneration to discredit the game's depiction of troglodytes. He claims the theory was used by European thinkers eager to believe everything and everyone in the New World was weaker and less capable. This is not only false, but paints the entire continent with multitudes of people with an androgynous racist brush. Absolutely. For a reference point, without looking up which of these individuals works for you, are you familiar with Charles Darwin, Johann Umbach, or Robert Knox? No influence or connection to Fort Knox. Most likely you recognise Darwin. The other two and others were nihilists of their day, who were authoritarian extremists who feared that pure races were needed for strength. Absolutely. And even back in the day, they were ridiculed for their beliefs. As Darwin's theory and genetic knowledge proved, that was false, and the theory is now an example of scientific based off prejudice rather than fact. You can learn more about the degeneration theory and how it's been discredited, in no small part to Darwin himself rejecting it, and it's got a link that you guys can follow if you're interested. I'm going to leave it there for a second and jump back and see what you guys are thinking. Broken entertainment, I'll grab this one first. Orcs are coded by racist woke idiots. Yeah, I don't know where this idea came from. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Psycho talk. Facepalm. Absolutely. And Broken Entertainment says this is what authors face now. Medieval Europe based fantasy is wrong. You can't write anything if you're white because it's cultural appropriation. Absolutely. Let's see what else we've got. Hey, Shadow of the Loaf Nose, welcome. Good to see you. D&D The Reckoning or How I Ruined an Otherwise cause Fine Game Cause Reasons. 7 out of 10, not enough representation. New York Times, 2021. I will look that one up. Thank you. Bye, Pudgy. Yeah, it might get a little bit much for you today, Pudgy, so you go play outside. And Darhimsin says, as a Norwegian, I find the path of the berserker incredibly offensive for anybody not of Scandinavian descent. Darkcaster says, if you cannot play what DM plays, find yourself a new DM or play yourself. It's easy as that. Absolutely. Pod Racing Palpatine, if that's how he views it, then the issue is his way of thinking, not mine. It is, yeah. It's projection. That's what I'm getting from this so far. But we'll read on a little bit further in a minute and see what else they have to say. But yeah. Let's have a look, see where did we get to. So Stuttervan would eventually get to the heart of his trendies argument. Oh, thank goodness for that. The buzzword talking point believed to be untouchable cultural appropriation. Yes, I'm shocked it took so long to bring it up as well, but bring it up they have. Stuttervan turns his attention to the path of the totem warrior and claims that its description and use of the phrases spirit animal, totem animal, and spirit healer are offensive and reductive appropriations of Native American culture. While history has thousands of years of documenting mankind's fascination with afterlife, immortality, spiritual powers, and animal relationships with these ideas, oftentimes depicted as gods in part or as whole, these facts are disregarded by the public medievalist. Facts don't mean a thing with these people. It doesn't matter that ancient Mayans, Egyptians, Norsemen, whom they referred earlier in the article regarding the berserker and shape-shifting bears, Arabians, and more civilizations that have risen and fallen throughout the millennia have had some depiction of animals in one aspect or another. Absolutely. Goes on to say, never mind that any, according to Studvant D&D, is guilty of Native American cultural appropriation only, meaning once again, the writers at the public medievalist are treating humans as subsections based on the colour of their skin rather than the soul within. I really like that sentence. After accusing D&D of being harmful to Native American culture, the article goes on to weaponize quotes from the oh my god. Declaration of War Against Exploiters of Lakota Spirituality. Which I won't click on the link, but you guys, I would highly recommend this article. They've really gone into depth and brought forth the arguments against this for their own by removing quotes, original context, and shoehorning into IDDRB's context. So again, there's cherry picking the bits that they think work for their own arguments, but without giving any context and without giving any background to quotes and bits that they're picking. The declaration calls out non-Indians, wannabes, hucksters, cultists, commercial profiteers, and self-styled New Age shamans and their followers who would exploit their traditions and actually practice a bastardization of their heritage. It does not say that fantasy worlds are the problem per se, but that the people who pretend to seek an enlightenment and mix native practices with practices like neo-paganism and shamanism should not and will not be tolerated, among other things. Now to the always guilt-ridden, self-awareness lacking, what can you do section. This should be good. This one doesn't disappoint, as it pitches a Kickstarter campaign that goes on to say that you're not an Indigenous player of D&D, you should avoid the half-orc, half-barbarian stereotype. No, you be whomever you want to be. He also instructs non-Indigenous players to banish the word savage and degenerate from your vocabulary, among other things. But the last item is truly telling of their intentions. This should be interesting. He tells players of the D&D, or perhaps choose another role-playing game altogether. And there we have it. That's right. They want people to abandon the game entirely and publish the D&D devs and punish D&D devs for showing the brutality of certain fantasy races in a way they deem unacceptable and offensive, because the D&D devs don't check enough boxes. So again, it goes back to, we want in on this thing, but we don't like it, so it's going to change to suit our needs. This isn't yours anymore. Trendies lack the vision, creativity, and originality to take the plethora of lore and tools at their disposal to build anything new, anything that can inspire and seek to destroy it. So all they believe, there is nothing left to compare their shortcomings against. Exactly. If you don't have the imagination to build your own character, if you don't have the imagination to work with a dungeon master, to play a game over weeks, months, maybe even years, they just do not have the ability to sink into the fantasy. And I think that's where fantasy really shines. It's the ability to take a deep dive into it. Goes on to say the only thing that can top their expectation of D&D players is how IDDRB ends, with a list of demands for Jeremy Crawford or anyone that works at Wizards of the Coast who might read this. They truly want their 50-layer cake and to eat all 100 of them too. They're even honest about it, how much it will cost fans, but that it's for the moral good, for the greater good. And new communities and future generations will keep embracing the game with Wizards of the Coast meet the listed demands. Again, always it's demands. This has to change. Which is a strange comment, because they spent the entire article saying that these communities and generations weren't embracing the game as it is. Yeah. So the article, Improving Dungeons and Dragons, Racism and the Barbarian, much like the One Ring, was picked up by Bill Baggins, did something unintended. It shone a light on how embedded trendies have become in the fantasy culture and how willfully ignorant and hateful they are. Rehashing angry and bitter ideas of self-loathing and discontented people, referencing centuries-old discredited theory to make it seem like a current issue, insulting people of every race and creed by segregating them based on the colour of their skin, geographical locations, demanding more changes be made, or to have everybody abandon the game completely. And the fantasy genre as a whole are merely symptoms of the disease. Wow. Let me scroll down and I will check back with you guys, because we're nearly at the end now. Actually, we are at the end. Let me finish this last couple of paragraphs and then I'll jump back to see what you guys are saying in the chat. Activism, a project of envy, drips on every sentence of the IDDRB. And the proof is that the fact that they'd rather do something about it themselves and create their own IP built off all of their ideals and rules, they want somebody else to do the work and bask in the relevance. Again, it's almost like it's almost insect-like. They come in and they take over. This isn't yours. We've seen that this is popular. We've seen that people are having fun. We want in on this, but we don't want to devote the time and effort and energy it takes to really learning either the game or about the books or about the IP. They just want, as the article said, just to have the cake and eat it. Perhaps if Sutherland spent more time engaging with his fellow man, asking questions and familiarising himself with the source material by simply reading, playing, etc., and enjoying it, they would realise what Professor Tolkien, and indeed fantasy, have been expressing this entire time, something that true escapists understand. That the bonds between us run deeper than what you can see on the surface. They are the shared life struggles and continuous ability to overcome that echo through our very souls. I would agree completely with that. And let me remove that. Oh, I'm sorry, Pat. Yeah, I didn't think it was going to be depressing either, but I think it's an important thing to talk about. We're going to switch up the conversation a little bit now. And I'm going to talk more about fantasy as a genre, because I know that a lot of you guys are huge fantasy fans, but I thought it was important to bring this up today. The greater good. Exactly, guys, you got it. I thought it was important because, as I said, I'm a huge fantasy fan. It's something that's always been with me ever since I've been, a little girl. I read the Brothers Grimm fantasy stories, those the sanitized child friendly versions, obviously, until I got older. But it's something that's always had something that's always struck a chord with me. So reading this article yesterday, it really kind of moved me, and I agree pretty much with everything that they said in it. And it's becoming more prevalent. It is insidious. But let's switch it up a little bit, because that was kind of depressing, wasn't it? And as fantasy fans, what do you love? See, for me, my go-to will always be Discworld. I absolutely adore the books. I've been reading it for probably 25 plus years. I've been lucky enough to, before he passed on, to meet Terry Pratchett multiple times. I've been to loads of conventions, and I've got to meet some really wonderful people because of it. And reading those books have enriched my life. Good morning, Canadian Spider-Man. Good to see you. And Steve Mitchum. Hey, guys. And good morning, Rambling Canuck. That was a really good show you guys had earlier. And Pod Racing Palpatine says, read the Shannara books or the Belgrade or the Wizard. Great stuff. I think I've read a few of those. I've also read things like Anne McCaffrey's books, the Dragons, the books. Pod Racing Palpatine says this world is an excellent series. It is, yeah. Mark the Infinitely Tired, along with the Chronicles of Padain and Dragonlance. Yep. Jim the Viking, Tolkien, Edding, Pratchett, Jordan. Unfortunately, I've heard rumours that Amazon is making a woke as hell TV adaptation of his books. Tolkien, yes, from what I can tell, and from the bits that have been reported so far, the Lord of the Rings series that Amazon is making is going to be woke. It's also incredibly expensive, so we'll see how well it does. The Shadow Life knows says it's honestly depressing that there's so many people in the modern media that seem to despise or misunderstand one of the greatest genres of fiction to ever grace our shelves. Their loss, honestly. I'd agree with that. So I know a lot of people that don't get fantasy, and that's fine. It's fine if you don't get it or you're not interested in it. But it's when people, they do want to get involved, but they don't want to put the effort in and the time in to learn about the world and to get to know other fans as well. That was brought up in the article. It's pushing out the established fan base and replacing it with people that don't really care about the IP, that would be more than happy to just jump onto something else when it becomes trendy. Let me grab that one. Fables and fairy tales are usually your entry into fantasy, sci-fi comics, and D&D, etc. Absolutely, that was my kind of jumping in point. It was, um, fairy tales, Snow White, Cinderella, those sort of. I had the Ladybird books. If anyone in the UK remembers those, little kid-size hardback books of all the Brothers Grimm stories and fairy tale stories, and I love those. I used to read them before I went to bed, and I read at a very early age because these books caught my imagination. I then moved on to Tolkien with Hobbit, C.S. Lewis with Chronicles of Narnia, and then onto Discworld. And then I kind of branched out into sci-fi fantasy with Anne McCaffrey. I've read more sci-fi based books, and then into things like cosmic horror with Lovecraft, which I also love, and even things like horror fantasy. So it's always been a genre that's kind of called to me and something that I've always enjoyed. Read the real Brothers Grimm. They are actually named Grimm, and Disney lied to us. Yes, they did. I I I do have a copy of the actual real Brothers Grimm. I I can kind of see why they got sanitized for kids, but yeah, I much prefer the real stories. And absolutely, Dragon Riders of Pern. I love Dragon Riders of Pern. Great books. It's one of those that I always thought was going to be made into a TV series, even if it was animated. But I'm kind of glad it didn't. And Paris said, I read the World Book Encyclopedia, Garfield and Conan. I was a dork and all over the place. Nothing wrong with that. Read everything you can. That's what I would recommend. Whatever sparks your imagination, whatever gets your interest. I know a lot of people just like to read manuals, um, but I always feel sorry for people that don't enjoy reading as a pastime, for people that don't find pleasure in reading. And I do know a few people. I always thought that was, I was felt a little bit sad for them because I love being able to sit down with a good book and just kind of escape for a couple of hours. The Shadow Loaf knows. It says Alric of Melbourne and Fahid the Grey Mouse are my personal favourites. Old fashioned in the way they're written, but adds to the charm. Better than the somewhat dry way most modern novels are. I'd agree with that. Yeah. And Mark says I hit the brakes on modern fantasy with the disappointment of Game of Thrones. Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I thought with Game of Thrones, it was kind of going to usher in a new, age for fantasy. It was going to spark people's imaginations, and I knew a lot of people enjoyed the books, but with the TV series, I think because it was such a letdown, people didn't want to then go back and read the books if they hadn't read them already. And we're probably never going to get that final book anyway, because he just keeps making excuses for not finishing it. And Colin says, used to watch a channel which compared film and TV fairy tales with the originals. Oh, that's kind of cool. I remember TV shows like Jack and Ori that used to tell stories and things like that. Let's have a look. Colin says to Mark and I, um, set in the same universe as the Crystal Singer and the Child People books. I also wanted a book where Pern was rediscovered. Oh, we're still talking about the Anne McCaffrey. Yeah, I remember the Crystal Singer books. Wasn't as big a fan, I've got to admit, because I always prefer dragons. Jester of Sin, winter isn't coming. No, I don't think it is, I've got to admit. I did have another list that I was going to bring up. I won't bring it up on screen, but I'll just kind of read through and see which ones you guys gravitate towards. So I found a list of the 25 greatest fantasy worlds. So see which ones you guys agree with. So they've got worlds like Asgard from Thor. Now this is the Thor as in from the MCU. But I would agree with that as well. I'd really like to visit Asgard. They bring up Azeroth, which is World of Warcraft. And hands up, guys, I've never been a huge World of Warcraft fan. I've never really had the time to really devote to it. But I think had I had the time, it's something that I would have gotten completely lost in. I kind of gravitated towards more Skyrim, those kind of games, the Elder Scrolls games, and Diablo. Those are and Baldur's Gate. Those are the ones that I loved, rather than World of Warcraft. But I know a lot of friends that have played it for years and years, and they still love it. This one that was brought up is kind of one that I completely forgot about, and I completely forgot that it was actually made into a short TV series as well. Dinotopia from the James Gurney novels. I vaguely remember, I think it was on Sci-Fi, or it might have been Sky One over here. But I love the idea of dinosaurs still being alive and being on some island with them. This one that they've brought up is a little bit more recent, so it's Fabletown from Fables. If you guys aren't big fans of the Fables comics, I'd highly recommend them. Really, really good. It's kind of like a spin on the classic fairy stories and Brothers Grimm stories. It's got all the characters you would expect, like the big bad wolf, Snow White, the Seven Dwarfs. But it gives a kind of modern twist on the fantasy. Really, really good books. Really would recommend picking those up if you're into that kind of thing. And one that you guys were talking about much earlier in the chat, the Forgotten Realms. So Dungeons and Dragons, of course. I've read a few of the books. I've got to admit I'm not as well versed in D&D as a lot of you guys probably are, because was never a tabletop gamer. It's something that I was curious about, but could never have the time to devote to it. So I didn't want to be one of those, in quotes, trendies, just a casual fan. If I was going to go for it, I wanted to be able to really kind of throw myself into it and really learn the lore. Oops. And big thank you to Pod Racing Palpatine. Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you for joining. Welcome. Broken Entertainment says, I'm kind of done with the books written in or before the 1960s. I've read all the ones I was interested in. Not interested in Game of Thrones because it's violent porn. So that side of it never bothered me, but I think if you're a huge fan, I think it's more the frustration of, they want to know how these books are going to end. No, Pod Racing Palpatine, you're not a maiden, you're a berserker, which will probably get me cancelled, since apparently we're not allowed to use the word berserker. And good morning to George Hilton, welcome. And Keely Chow, good to see you. Roll Tide, Keely. Battle him, Asgard. It's just the party before the battle. Of course you want to visit. Absolutely. um, Jim says, World of Warcraft player, 2004 to 2011. Gave up once a destroyed, amazing lore world for a point and click hand holding game. Started playing Skyrim after that to fill my fantasy gaming needs. I did too, and I even tried playing Elder Scrolls Online, but it just didn't grab me the way Skyrim did or Oblivion did. I mean, I'm kind of curious for the next game, but I Bethesda, yeah, we'll see. Good morning to Low Spec Linux Laptop. It says, for me, Morrowind is the best Elder Scrolls game. It was. They were all great games. They just slowly, I think, lost their way a little bit. Darth as I said, those hack and slash PS2 games, champion of Norath, love those games. I did too. I loved the Legacy of Kain games. I loved the Baldur's Gate games. All those sort of things. Had a lot of fun with them. Pod Racing Palpatine says Fables and Sandman comics. Both of those I would recommend. Absolutely. I've always been a big fan of Sandman and Fables. Canadian Spider-Man said Lord of the Rings was the last book series I've read. Well, the only one really. That's okay. I gotta admit, I do love Lord of the Rings, but it's been a long time since I read the books. I think it's because I'm a little bit spoilt with how good the films were. Sorry guys, let me just take a drink. How good the films were, you know, you can just pop on the extended edition and get lost in Tolkien's amazing world. Oh, thank you, Jim. Jim says, I'm a Viking, and I say, like a true Viking, you do not need my permission to use our culture. Thank you. I'm pretty sure I've got some sort of mix. I've never actually done a genealogy test, but that's a possibility, most definitely, that I have some Viking blood. And good morning to you, Marty with a C. Good to see you. And good morning to Cavatano Cavalryman Che. Been playing Legends of Zelda games for almost a year now on Nintendo 3DS XL. Nice. Fantasy, especially in games, has always been a staple. You know, you think back to the Final Fantasy games as well, how much people love those. Again, we were talking about Elder Scrolls, how well those have done. Diablo, always loved Diablo. Looking forward to the re-release when it comes out, and curiously hopeful about the next game as well when that comes out. Naughty Monkey says, read Lord of the Rings so many times, been a long time though. Same. It's probably been about 5 or 6 years since I read the books. But when I do read them, I just read them back to back. I read them all the way through. But for me, if I was going to read one, I tend to pick up The Hobbit because it's a much shorter book and I can get through it much quicker. Barahim says, I think the SJWs did try to cancel Berserker because of Keanu Reeves. Imagine that. Mm-hmm. And Mark brings up a good one as well, one that I actually put in the thumbnail. The Harry Potter books were easy reads for novels and aimed at children. I enjoyed them. I did too. Wasn't a massive fan of the films, I've got to admit, but the books I thought were enjoyable, and they certainly, introduced a whole new generation of children to the joy of reading. I remember growing up, everybody had these books. you'd see them at school, you'd see the kids on buses or trains with them, and it captured their imaginations. And anything that does that, I think, can't really be a bad thing. Let me see if I can grab a few more of these fantasy worlds and see what you guys think. So again, the one we just talked about, Hogwarts Harry Potter series. Yeah, I remember that the wait and the excitement for the books coming out, queuing at midnight at bookstores. We've got bookstores in the UK called Waterstones, and they used to have kind of big events whenever the Harry Potter books were released, and fans would turn up and they'd have the witches' cloaks on and the hats and broomsticks, and it was really sweet to see, And it wasn't just kids as well; it was kids with their parents, it was teenagers, it was adults who loved the books, and it was just a case of fans coming together to celebrate something that they loved. People weren't judging them for it. The same with the Discworld conventions. We have people from all over the world, people of all creeds, colours, come together just to have a good time and talk Discworld, and to get to know each other and play games, play board games. One that you guys were talking about, just Hyrule Legend of Zelda. Awesome games. It's ones that I really need to kind of get back into. But Ocarina of Time, Twilight Princess, great games. Let's see what else we've got. One that's a more modern one, and one that seems to kind of split people's opinions that I really loved, was His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. I got into those books probably a little bit older than I should have done, but they were so well written and they just sucked me in. Apparently, the TV series that's been released is pretty good as well. The film had Nicole Kidman in, not so much. But I might go back and actually watch the TV series because I think it was pretty good. Plus, I also love the idea of person's soul being outside of the body and being in the shape of an animal. I thought that was a really clever idea. And then obviously the big one, Middle Earth, Lord of the Rings. Again, probably one of the greatest film trilogies of all time. It's one that I go back to time and time again. And the books I enjoyed. They were one of my gateways into the fantasy genre. And I'm very happy to have been able to read them when I did growing up. And just as a side note, where I live, a lot of the places Tolkien based and put them into his novels, so that's pretty cool. Another one that's been brought up was Stephen King's Dark Tower series. I've got to admit, I do like the Dark Tower series. I wouldn't say it's King's best work, but it is the one that he seems to be the most proud of. But I did enjoy them, I've got to admit. And then the other one that kind of goes hand in hand with Tolkien is Narnia, so C.S. Lewis. And obviously that starts with The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. It's a little bit more for kids than Tolkien was, but it never talked down to children. And it had a strong kind of Christian message running through it, which was also kind of cool, but it wasn't patronizing in any way. So I always enjoyed those as well. Let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. Hey, Buttcrap Media. Good morning. Good to see you. Padres and Palpatine says, take the Tolkien tour. I have, actually. I have taken it. I've taken it a couple of times. Once things get back to normal, I think I'll do it again. It's a really good tour. Barohim says, Humeria, Conan, not on the list, but again, a great sword and sorcery. And that's one part of the fantasy genre that we don't have a lot of anymore. Sword and sorcery, Conan, Red Sonja. So I'd like to see that come back, definitely. And William Jackson, you have a fantastic day. So it's got a premiere. I'm modding for Be Safe or Live Long and Prosper. You have a fantastic day, and thank you for joining us. Pod Racing Palpatine says Star Wars. Yes, as I was talking with the awesome Echo Base last night, Star Wars is also a fantastic world to get sucked into. And I think I mentioned that I've just started reading the EU novels by Timothy Zahn, and I'm loving them. I'm about halfway through it, Heir to the Empire at the moment. They were recommended to me, and I'm very grateful that they were, because I'm absolutely loving them. Colin says, how toxic would I be if I admitted to liking sword and sorcery? Not at all, because I love it as well, I've got to admit. Oh, Mary, you have a great day too. She says, have to run to a meeting now. Have a great day, rise and shine. You too, sweetheart. You have a great day. You take care. And yeah, I see you guys talking about as well. Yeah, I hope he feels better as well soon. I think he's just being a little bit under the weather today. Broken Entertainment says, you should give the Stormlight Archive a try. I'd personally recommend the audiobooks if you don't want to sit down and read through 1,000 pages per book. Um, it's not so much the size of the book, it's if it grabs me. So usually I will read probably 200 pages, and if I'm not sucked into a book that size by then, I tend to kind of put it down. But if it grabs me straight away, then yeah, I will dive straight into it. And Mark says Dragon Slayer was a good movie for its time. I love Dragon Slayer. Love the dragon that they made in that. And Cam also loves Conan, Red Sonja. Yeah, I think we do need more more of that. Let's see. Hey, Snortocutus. Let me try again. Snortopupus cuber. There we go. Good to see you. Good morning. Welcome. And yeah, Broken Timber, I agree as well. Audiobooks are very useful, especially obviously if you're traveling to and from work or just doing other jobs. But again, I just like I like having a book. I think that's what it is, especially hardback books. If I can get a book in hardback, I will get them in hardback. Like I was just saying, the Thrawn trilogy, I've got them in paperback, which I'm reading through, but I've also just picked up each of them in hardback as well, so I can put them on the shelf because I've enjoyed them that much. Oh my god. What are you guys saying? Oh, about the Dragonheart films. Yeah, apparently there are 5. I've only ever seen the first one, and that was the only one I was ever really interested in because it had Sean Connery voicing Draco. I need to watch that film again now. Think that's what I'll be doing later on today. And Dungeons and Dragons Palace says like did not translate well to movies. No, neither did World of Warcraft, unfortunately. I think it's too much to try and put into a time constraint that a film has. Which is why even though Lord of the Rings worked, it was the way that Peter Jackson set the books out. So I don't know how they're going to go about doing this TV series now for Amazon, but I would be curious to see. Mark says, Purple Valkyrie after the Thrawn trilogy, you need to read the Thrawn duology and then Outbound Flight. Okay, I will add those to my list. Thank you, Mark. I will give those a go. Give those a go if you recommend them. Thank you. I'm always on the lookout for good recommendations for books, guys. So if there's anything that you love, let me know and I will give it a go. It's one thing that I need to actually get back into again now is reading, because I do miss it. Oh my gosh, thank you guys for joining me today. Hope it wasn't too depressing to begin with. I know it was a little bit more of a serious subject today, but it's one, as I said, that kind of struck a chord with me, and I thought, well, I've got to talk about this. So huge thank you to everyone that joined today. You guys are the best, and thank you to everyone for your super chats. Anyone who is a member for Loki, we've got a membership stream this evening. I think he said it's at 5 Central, so that should be pretty cool, and look forward to that. And I will be back on Wednesday, guys. And before that, no doubt I will see you all around on YouTube. So big thank you again for joining me, and I hope everyone has a fantastic day. Have a great one, guys. Mwah! And what I will do is I will leave you with the outro. See you later, guys. Bye.